Welcome back to the Reclaiming Creativity Summit. I am lucky to talk today with Breanne Gibson. She is a global change leader for regeneration, speaker, educator, eco-nutritionist expert, and permaculture practitioner. She is the founder of Breanne Gibson, LLC, a coaching and consulting company focused on helping world-shaping leaders and entrepreneurs harmonize with nature and their feminine energy so they can access new levels of creativity, resiliency, and flow, and have real fulfillment in their lives, relationships, and businesses. Her mission is to be a force with nature and help bridge the gap between soil and health for both humans and planet. Breanne, it is so wonderful to have you on the summit. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you do so much good work in the world. You work with women around nutrition, around health, around balancing feminine energy. And I love how in your bio that already you tie that in so beautifully with creativity, just from in your bio. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about your work.
Sure, yeah. So it's a few different pieces, but if we focus more on the coaching side, so I work with world-shaping leaders and entrepreneurs, women predominantly, and really help them tap into their source through nature connection. Mm-hmm. So I call it harmonizing with nature to really optimize your health experience. So you're living in more of your full potential and power with that deep underlying area of connection within your true nature and the nature around you.
Mm. How do you feel like that ties into creativity?
Oh, well, personally, I've experienced, at one point in my life, I was like, I didn't grow up with that kind of you're creative mindset. So at one point in my life, I was like I want to be creative. Like, why can't I be creative? And I found in terms of, for my own personal, it was a lot of just openness. And for me, nature connection is a huge space where I experienced a lot of creativity and really tapped into my own personal creativity. So in terms of how it connects with my work, reconnecting to nature, your essence, your true nature, and the nature around you, I find is a huge driver for sparking creativity.
Oh, you summed that up so beautifully. Thank you. And do you have a definition of creativity that you use for yourself or that you like to when working with your clients? How do you frame creativity for them?
Yeah. Creativity to me is something that it's an idea that's thought in the mind that is brought into physical form. So it brings something into being that was no longer, like, wasn't present before. And it starts from an idea in the mind.
Yeah. Do you have any creative rituals that you like to practice, like to help get you into your flow or whatever it is that you're doing?
So there's many, actually. I don't know if there's like one thing. It really depends. Simply sometimes it can just be like what my morning routine has become. And it hasn't been the same. Like it's not a structured thing for me, but it's just like I know what helps get me into my groove. So those activities, and I'm not sure if you want to go into them, but
yes, please.
Yeah. So the first thing in the morning, and this is just one example of where creativity happens for me, is I've been doing a series called Tibetan Rites. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a series of 5 movements that you do repeatedly, up to 21 times. I typically just do 5 of 5. So 5 of this exit, and then 5 of that, 5 of that. So I do that every morning. That just kind of like opens me up. And then I do handstand. I go upside down for a while. So I had like a handstand practice. So I get upside down, get like the blood rushing to my head right away in the morning, and do a few different exercises, but a lot of just like putting myself inverted, and then rebound. So then I come and kind of like activate my vagus nerve through like the lymphatic, like, and just kind of like stimulate myself through up and down motion. And then we have a sauna. So I go into the infrared sauna, and then I do my meditation and visualization process. So it's kind of like a opening, then some activation stuff, get the blood moving in different levels, and then then dive into like a more still practice and meditation visualization process. And that's where like the ideas for the day, or like, if I'm working on a creative project, or get more details on it. And that's kind of where it unravels.
I love it. So, you are, I see on your Instagram, because I follow you, and a lot of the work that you do has to do with growing food, like having a garden, tending to the food that you consume. And I don't think that there's any one thing that people need to do in order to be creative. However, I do think that there is very much a link between growing a garden, growing things, even if it's a plant, from a plant within the home to having a big garden in your backyard, or even your small plot of land, or the kitchen, your kitchen herbs, whatever it is, seeing something go from seed to taking care of that seed, to understanding the nutrients that needs to be in the soil, to being something that you actually consume. I think that is a way to creativity, but it's something that I know that you talk to your clients about. And I'm wondering what you feel like, if you feel like there's a link between being in the dirt, working with gardening, growing your own food, if there's a link between that and creativity.
Yeah, that's a great question, Alicia. So how I see it and how I describe it is, in nature is constantly being creative. And like the power does start in the seed, like the creative process starts in the seed. But as you put yourself in an environment where you're constantly being exposed to something that's constantly changing on a level that you can actually see visually with the eye, is really like, it just really opens yourself up to possibility. And like, also in a more like a mature garden, for example, like just the dynamic of like shapes and colors and textures and how things interact with each other. And, from one small plant, like you said, that in of itself is extremely powerful, just to care for a plant, but also to see, it through its different seasons, and how it grows, and you're nurturing it. There's a connection there on like a more subtle level, even with one plant itself, but then into a garden of like, it just becomes somewhat of a rainforest. And by going into such a dynamic space where there's so many interactions and interconnections, it opens the mind up to like possibility, of just what's possible, because it's just in a lot of ways just so beautiful, and in other ways just like mind-blowing, because it's like, look at these patterns, like how did these patterns even come to be? And like all these, it just, it opens the mind, because the mind's kind of like, whoa, like even just looking at one specific flower, or seeing how something breaks open, then the mind is just like, whoa.
What you started with, like the power in the seed, what an incredible metaphor for creativity as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have this little seedling of an idea,
Yes.
and there's so much power in that. And then what happens as you care for that creative project that you have, from seed to in the dirt, in the darkness, incubating, and all of the things that are happening, to when it hits the sunlight. And
yeah, and you're speaking directly to like the unseen, right? It's like the invisible meets the visible.
Yes.
Right? So it's like we don't see, and and exactly as you just said, like in business, it's like you have this idea, it's unseen to the world, it's in you, it's like you're here for it, And it's like, you just have to nurture that seed and trust that seed and just go with that seed. And then it's just like, and then it becomes visible. Like, it's like, and then it just opens and it like becomes this beautiful, beautiful thing that, if that nurturing hadn't been there, or that attention and care hadn't been there, the seed, like it wouldn't have come to be.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about when you were on my podcast a little while ago, that I wanted to dive into a little bit more, and I think it's pertinent to this, is that you with your clients talk about space and like even like where you live, your internal and external environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you can give us a few tips, maybe 1 or 2 tips about how to make our space, maybe the place we like to create, be it a workspace, a home space, a writing space, more conducive to a creative expression.
Yeah, so it really comes down to sometimes on an individual basis, because as you get to know your creativity, it's like, kind of what sparks it. And it can be very different for different people.
Which is why people should work with you.
Yeah. So on a broad scope, like in terms of your external environment, in today, there can be a lot of distractions. So it's really being in tune with knowing what can distract you and ensuring that those notifications are off or that's over there. So it's like a sacred space. Essentially, you're creating a sacred space because you know how important your creative work, or you providing that space for yourself to tap in, whatever that means for you, is important. I love, from a more tactical kind of standpoint, whether it's bringing plants into that space. So it's like, it's grounding. It's also really good for indoor air quality, so on a health side, but also then on a creative side, it can just give you that edge of sensation and like the feeling of the space that you're in, that it's opening and it's grounding, but also, expanding. So yeah. I don't know if that answers your question clearly, but yeah.
Absolutely. And I do want to encourage folks that if they are feeling blocked in some way that they think it could have to do with space, or even, and we're probably not going to go into this in this particular episode, but maybe reconnecting to your feminine energy or even the divine masculine, that they definitely need to talk to you. So they need to schedule some work with you for sure. So I want to definitely plug that. But I'm wondering how you feel like your creative rituals, like just the process of creating for you helps you tap into your inner wise woman.
So how my practices help me tap in. A lot of it comes from motion first. Mm-hmm. So it's very rare that I can just go like sit somewhere and like start creating. Like I have to like physically move my body. I have to like activate other energy in me. And even being out in nature, like going out, being in that space is really like energizing for me. And also like, I just get waves of like ideas as I'm like walking through a forest. But like, I think the one piece I'll mention is like being dedicated to your practices, because it's not like, it's not always like every day, you're going to drop in. But it's through that consistency of like trust in knowing what serves you best. Like whether that's from a health standpoint, or whether that's from like mentally how you feel, emotionally how you feel, spiritually how you feel connected to yourself after you do this specific thing. Maybe it's a tea in the morning, maybe it's, it can be little things, but as you do those things, that is also what creates calm in the body, but also is what sparks creativity in the body. You enter more into a parasympathetic mode. So it's like, that's where, more of these ideas and these big ideas and creative thinking can come into play, rather than being in a more stressed kind of, the space is not expansive in that, it's contracting.
Right.
So yeah.
Oh, I love that. I'm curious, is there anything else you would like to share about creativity or your work that we should know about?
Well, I like, we're creative. Like, we're creative beings. Like, we are here to create. Like, we are here for a purpose, and we have, like, part of that purpose is creating it into real time, like bringing it forward out in physical expression. I mean, it can show up in various ways, but like allowing that creativeness to come out, is a huge, what I believe, of like being here, living in this body, in this lifetime, that, okay, like, I'm a creative being. We are all creators. And to really identify, with being a creator, like a powerful creator, that, then that can start unraveling. Yeah, like, I am here to create this, and this is this is what I'm here to do. It's not anyone else's task. This is my, like, I have this idea, it's waiting for me. Like, it's already there. If you have the idea, it's waiting for you. You have that idea because it's already existing, and it's just asking you to step into it more and more. So yeah, we are creators.
Yes, and you could not have said that better. I mean, that was just a phenomenal expression of what creativity is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think you have a free gift for everyone.
Yes. Yeah. So on my website, I have, it's quite an extensive guide. It's called the Regenerative Roadmap. It highlights the 5 main pillars that I move through with my coaching clients. There's some steps, there's some tasks, some supportive information in there. So for any of you that are curious about like creating more of a regenerative lifestyle, regenerative mindset, regenerative environment, that would be something that would really support you.
Wonderful. And we will put a link to that just underneath your interview. And Breanne, thank you so much for being a part of the Reclaiming Creativity Summit.
Thank you so much for having me, Alicia.